Welcome to Hashknife Hangouts. I'm Kalen. The guy on the left-hand part of the screen is my father, Brandon. If this is your first time joining us, like, comment, and subscribe. Find us at the links below. Today's topic is agricultural impacts on the general population. Frankly, last week I continued to look for something less cattle-centric. And at the end of the conversation, of this particular conversation, you may have said that I missed the mark on that again. So hey, we're where we at. Anyway, I'm gonna kind of go through two particular topics, at least ideas that I had. And in a way, this is more like a thinking time with dad. So I have one.
Schizophrenia is you.
What's that?
Schizophrenia is you.
Yeah.
That's your thinking time, kind of.
Yeah. But anyway, I got two things I had. One was from Twitter, and the other was from Facebook and Twitter because I saw some stuff on the news this week that really angered me. But we'll start with the one that I had specifically from Twitter, and it's actually a short opinion piece that I found, and I thought it was really interesting. It's called Two-Faced Frauds, and it looks like it's a reoccurring opinion piece called "It's the Pits" with Lee Pitts from Los Osos, California. And I'll just kind of read the article and then I'll get Dad's take on it. So it says, we've become a nation of pompous, two-faced frauds. We like to eat good food, but hate the farmers and ranchers who produce it. We think food comes from the grocery store and that the water comes from the tap. We cuss fossil fuels and yet drive cars and trucks that run on oil and gas. We turn up the thermostat in the winter and expect heat to automatically come as if it was produced by magic. Ditto on air conditioning in the summer. The only time we think about it as if the grid is if the grid goes down. Voters elect politicians who vow to get rid of fossil fuels, not even thinking of the repercussions, and then complain to high heaven when there are blackouts that last for 3 days, like the one they have in California, when everyone turns on their air conditioner at the same time. We badmouth the foresters and their angry chainsaws, but live in bonuses made of wood. Excuse me, houses. This type is horrible. We despise miners who, quote, rape the earth, but wear jewelry, hoard gold, and use cell phones dependent on mined metals. A city, county, or township sends out notices warning you to keep the dry vegetation cut down on your property, and if you don't comply, they'll chop it down for you and send you a bill. Yet the bureaucrats want to kick cows off the public land who are mowing the dry vegetation for free. In fact, the ranchers are paying for that privilege. Using the bureaucrats' same logic, shouldn't the rancher be paid for reducing the fire danger? We've gone from a nation that made, grew, or built things to transporting, moving, and managing Chinese imports and massaging and manipulating money on Wall Street. We say we want to eat pure food without chemicals and then turn around and buy fake meat with 32 different ingredients, many of which you know nothing about unless you're a chemistry professor. Then we badmouth beef, which has only one ingredient, beef. Hollywood starlets and movie stars go on Ellen and say they don't want any foreign substances in their body, and then they smoke and snort cocaine. We're all for biodiversity, yet we want to rid the world of non-native species, except, of course, the illegals who cross our southern borders to mow our lawns, re-roof our houses, and raise our kids. We vow to save endangered species like red-headed frogs and fairy shrimp that live in the rural West, while 97% of our population lives on 3% of our land, which they've turned into a sterile environment where there are no species left to save. They wiped out all of the species in the neighborhood, and now they want to tell us to save them in ours. The urbanites dictate what happens on the other 97% of the land because they know so much more about nature than the rural families who've survived there for 5 and 6 generations. The animal rightists are aghast that cattle, swine, and sheep are humanely euthanized, but don't say a thing when packs of wolves rip the flesh from the bones of a baby lamb or eat the hind end of our cow as she calves, leaving behind the cow and the calf to die a slow death. The environmental blatherers and eco-twaddlers use words like sustainable while working in cube farms and living in concrete jungles where they can't even see the sun. They think the humanity is the greatest cancer on Mother Earth and that we're all going to either freeze or burn to death to pay for our sins. They eased the conscience by writing an annual check to the Sierra Club at Christmas. First, they said the paper bags were terrible, so they switched us all to plastic, and then you had to bring your own bag to the store. Then they found that wasn't sanitary or sustainable, so now they're back to paper bags. It will be the same thing with many of these issues. When they finally wake up and discover that cows, sheep, and goats make great four-legged firemen, there won't be anyone left who knows a tulip from a turnip or which end of a cow gets up first. They'll have meatless Mondays, all right, starvation Sundays, and Saturdays and foodless Fridays too. So I'll turn it over to Dad with that, because there's a lot to unpack with that little comment or that little opinion piece, but there's also a lot I agree with.
There's a ton in there that, and you know, again, we try to keep this as apolitical as possible, but sometimes we go there because we are ruled by politics. I mean, everything is anymore. And that's the problem, because if you want to screw something up, give it to a politician, let the government handle it. It's the most inefficient and most expensive and the most incomplete way to get something done.
Right.
Yeah, he's right on a lot of parts there. Good God, I'm trying to
well, I
remember
grabbed my
some of the
notepad.
specifics.
Yeah, because he talked about other things. I wanted to focus on ag, because again, there's a lot of other stuff here. But the first thing he talked about was he kind of opened with all the politics, raping the earth for metals and stuff like that. And then he gets to a city, county, or township sends out notice warnings for you to keep the dry vegetation cut down on the property. And if you don't comply, they'll cut it down for you and send a bill. Yet then they, farmers and ranchers have to then pay for that right in order to get the grazing rights for their animals. So I guess that's probably the first one,
Well, and it goes beyond that. How many people in the cities, and you can argue that a dog or a cat living in a town or city has to pay a tax to have their animal licensed. What most people don't know, even people that I've known for a long time, don't realize we pay a tax on our property.
Right.
Just like everybody else. I mean, we have property taxes here in this state and no sales tax, which is good, because if we had sales tax, we'd have property tax and sales tax. There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, they never take taxes away.
Yeah.
And so that's been part of the argument, part of the reason why we've been able to do that. But our property taxes are exorbitant. They're so high that people can't pay them. They have to move off the land. They have to sell the property, and meaning ranches, to pay for it, because we have people that move in and have moved in right beside us, in a small piece of ground that was subdivided. God, I hate subdivisions. And then there you go,
Well, it goes back to his part too. It's 3% living on the ground, and they've essentially destroyed it, because while they tell us how to do what we do in our part of the world, they also have killed and destroyed everything that's in theirs, because everything's under asphalt.
Right. Well, and the point to this is, these people moving in, move your head forward. We've lost your face. There you go.
Sorry. I'm trying to write these notes through the thing.
Yeah. But they move next to us knowing not of what we do, and then are surprised when we do what we do, and then wonder why we're a little upset, or it's bothersome that our property taxes went up because they overpaid for a piece of ground that they're on, because what they pay for that affects what we have to pay, which is for agricultural land. It doesn't matter. It still increases our rates. Plus, every cow, every horse that we run on that place, we pay a tax on them individually. I have to count what we have by species, by gender, and by age, and submit that report to the state of Montana, and pay a tax on each individual. They don't know that. They don't realize that.
Well, another thing too is I just thought about this is we pay that, you pay a dollar per head of cattle that's sold for the essentially the lobbying that goes towards benefiting
beef checkoff.
the check off.
Yeah.
Is there something similar? Because we have registered Tennessee Walkers, so a registered horse. Is there something because of it's registered that you have to sell, or you have to have an additional? It's not. It's kind of a tax, but it's not. That when they sell, that you have to send it in or something.
Well, yeah, that's for a registration transfer. So I would not count that as a tax per se. What it is, and it has nothing to do with a government entity, as in, okay, if you don't do this, they're going to come take your property. Because if you don't pay your taxes, guess what's going to happen? The government's going to seize your property or properties, and cattle, horses. That's all property. So what you're doing is you're paying for a fee or a title transfer. Basically, you have a registration on a horse, and it is a registered Tennessee Walker. It is a registered quarter horse, registered whatever, and you belong to a breed organization, which is who says, oh yeah, we got this animal has had either a blood type done on him or a DNA sample, so that we can prove the parentage and say, yes, it is definitely of this breed. That's all that really is about. Okay. And who owns it, who bred it. So you're just transferring that title. That's not really a tax, no. And every organization is a little different. So that's just basically like a title transfer for a car, and a title transfer really is not a tax in it's more like a fee itself. It's a fee for just that. Who owns the title to this? Who has that? It's just a fee transfer. So there's not that. And when you sell that animal, you're not taxed on that. You are taxed on, not on the sale. You are taxed on what that sale was. So if we sell a horse for, let's say, $10,000 horse, we sell that horse, then the state and the feds at the end of the year with your income will tax you on that amount of money that you made on it. So it's like it's an income tax for that. Same way with the cattle. We don't dictate what the cattle bring. So when they do sell, if we take a loss on them, we are still taxed on that money that's brought in. Figure that one out.
Yeah. Anyway, grazing costs.
So for you city folk, for you city folk, when you don't make money, you're still taxed on what little was brought in.
Well, and all kind. It actually, I'm not even gonna say that it relates, because I think it does, but it doesn't. The 3%. He said the 3% in the cities dictate what the 97% do on essentially multi-generational farms and ranches. This is where I get very passionate, because I've seen it, especially every time I visit places like San Antonio, Buffalo, New York, Louisville, Los Angeles, Denver, Vegas. These are all major cities I've been to. Nashville,
Atlanta. You've been to Atlanta,
Orlando. Like those are all major cities that nobody can ever say, oh, that's not a major city. Like you can't count that. I'm like, no, you definitely can. And every single one of them has just it's pure asphalt. That's what frustrates me. And they have to carve out locations within the city in order to have a park.
Grass.
And it's so frustrating. And then they turn around. Many of these people turn around and then they say, this is how you should live. This is how you should do things. I'm like, you're talking about sustainability, and yet you ride on mass transit. And I got it. Like that probably minimizes, the carbon footprint or whatever, because there's more people using only one asset versus, multiple. However, at the same time, you've killed all of the ground around you in a 20 square mile location, because it's all under asphalt. And then you turn around and tell us how we should manage forests. Like, look at California. You have people in major cities telling others how to manage forests, and then it turns into a fireball. And regardless, yes, does climate change have a part in that? Yeah, but a large portion of that can be fixed through proper mitigation and care through forest managery. Like that, it's very simple concept that those who have never been in that part of the world just don't understand. And that's where I started getting passionate about it, because you don't tell me how to live because you think that's how I should do things. If you haven't been there, it's the same thing with dealing with horses and cattle. Like if you've never dealt with a horse and a cow, don't tell me how to work and operate with that animal until you've done it yourself and you have a little bit of experience to be able to back up the reasoning behind why you're telling me what to do.
Yeah, if somebody is telling me what would work to do something with a cow or a horse, I'll listen to it because I don't know their background. I don't know what they know. And if what they're telling me is like, "Ooh, you know what? That's interesting. I'll have to try that sometime." Or they're telling me and I'm like, "You don't even know what a horse or a cow sounds like."
Right.
You couldn't tell the difference in their vocal expression one from the other. So yeah, exactly. Here's what gets me is your example of using mass transit in a city. I get that. It's not because, but they're not using that because, for the most part, I think for most people, that it is reducing a carbon footprint or doing anything like that. And you're talking, and I hate that. The carbon footprint, that's a man-made, made-up term. Climate change is a man-made term that covers everything, because it used to be that we were all going to be into the next ice age. When I was in school, when I was a little kid and even into high school, oh, we're going to be into an ice age. Oh, we got to change our ways or we're in an ice age. Then it went to, oh, wait a minute, that's not working. It's got to be global warming. We're going to be global warming. We're going to burn up. Well, that's not working. So now it's climate change. Yeah, climate does change. No kidding. Everybody knows that. It's not a big deal. So when they are using mass transit and it is more for them, it's not about that for most people. I think it's a convenience.
Probably.
It's hard to own a car. It's hard to park a car. It's hard to keep a car. It's hard to do all these traveling things in a car. It's actually faster for many of them. As I've been to a couple big cities. I haven't been to a lot of them like you have.
Well,
And had to
anymore
be
with
there for.
Uber's better too, because you have the benefits of a car without having to deal with the maintenance and the gas.
Right, but you're still dealing with a car.
You are. Yeah.
Now, if you put that personal experience from that perspective of, oh, we have to use mass transit, we're much more enlightened because we do that. And they try to put that on us. How can we do our job without personal transportation?
Right.
It's impossible.
Well, I mean, that goes to an article or a opinion piece or something I saw probably a month ago, where somebody was arguing all pickups need to be immediately stopped being assembled by all manufacturers, because the farmers and ranchers really don't need them. And the entire ag Twitter community was in an uproar. It was hilarious because they're like, listen, not all of us utilize a pickup every single day. Got it.
Right.
Understand. And a lot of the people, if you go to places like here, San Antonio, Atlanta, New York City, Detroit, you start naming the major cities throughout the United States. Yeah. Do they have pickups? Yeah. How many of them actually need it? Probably not a lot. Very few. However,
unless
those
they're
who
using it
do
for a
need,
business.
right, unless it's a business, like something like roofing, electricity, something like that. But the vast majority of people who need pickups are not in the city, and they need it because they're, like you said, they're hauling things constantly. They're moving things around. They might be towing something, and to suddenly stop manufacturing that, you will effectively kill all ag. Like it's just that.
Try to get a vehicle. When I say vehicle, I'm talking, when I call it that, I mean a car. I mean a car that you would go down the highway with to go somewhere, because it's efficient, it's small. That's a car. That's a vehicle to me. A pickup is something that you use for work, and you have some thing that you need to do with it, like you say. Now, it isn't just towing something or pulling something or hauling something. How about covering some of the terrain that we need to cover? You can't do it in a car.
Oh yeah, with the clearance, that's what you're talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah, because you're not going to be able to get over a sagebrush. Well, you can with a car, but it might cause some issues.
Yeah, or like
over
tear the bottom of
logs.
your car out, or
Yeah.
or start fires, or
Yeah.
there you go again. I mean, even with a pickup, I'm very, very careful about where we travel this time of year. And we just had to do some fencing a little bit and had to go through a couple of the pastures. Well, I was in the pickup, had to have it because guess what I had on the back of that? A
Hey.
post hole digger,
Oh yeah. The
right?
auger. Yeah.
The auger, and which for those who don't know, it's like a hydraulic corkscrew,
Yeah.
if you want to call it that. For those that don't know, and you dig a hole, it's much faster, easier to do than doing it by hand. You can do it by hand, but I'll tell you what, I would, anybody who doesn't like that, come on out. Come on out. We'll do some fencing and I'll give you the privilege of chipping through rock, solid rock,
Yeah. That's what built my
sandstone.
shoulders in high school.
Yeah, there you go. And so, we're pushing down some fence or some post holes to rebuild and then add to some corrals. But I also had your mother in a side by side, which has got a complete full skid plate underneath where you can't get, grass doesn't touch an engine or hot parts, and 50 gallons of water with a spray pump in the back of that, just in case something happened and we start a fire.
Yeah.
I mean, so now we're using two vehicles, but we also got, because I call that little one a vehicle, but it's kind of an all terrain thing too. But
Yeah.
you got a pickup and a side by side in order to go do a job. That's got to be. We had to get it done. Got to, and you don't get to always pick when you're going to do some fencing. Wintertime, yeah, normally not, because now you're going through frozen ground. We're not going to do that, and you got a very narrow window, and you can't get it all done. So anyway, there's my rant on that. There are some things that are not conducive to a vehicle car type conveyance.
My biggest point is, first of all, don't tell me what to do. Second of all, if you don't know what,
Get that from your mother.
yeah, the other thing too, though, it's just simply, the point I made. If you don't know what you're talking about, you definitely have no grounds in which to direct me in how to do things. Like that's my biggest thing. But moving on.
Well, no, with that though, you don't want to stop the conversation, because we've had some folks that were out and no idea from the East Coast. And I mean, really great people have no idea, but they asked questions.
There's
And
a
they
difference
say,
between asking questions and understanding and clarifying and maybe making
yes,
you like explain it versus saying,
yes,
hey, you're doing it wrong, you need to do it this way. I'm like, no.
right. Well, and that's, but there was to begin with an air of, this just doesn't seem right to me. So why do you do that? That's fine. Well, this is why it doesn't seem right, because you don't understand how this goes. But this may be different for somebody else, for somebody else's ranch, because they're all run a little bit differently based on, again, your assets. But that conversation is important. And I think having that like that gave them particularly an appreciation for what we do and how we do it. And they didn't know.
Right.
But yeah, there's an arrogance that comes with that. And we've met with that as well. That when I go to a city, I think I'm kind of an anomaly. And yeah, you are met with smart ass remarks, and a condescension
Not
up the
appreciated.
Oh yeah. It's like they're just condescending, like you're dumb, like you're an idiot.
Well, I mean, comments about, oh, just trying to kill the world one cow at a time, huh? Like,
Yeah, exactly. Where's your
exactly
horse? Yeah. How'd you get to town?
how'd you order that steak while you're sitting there? Anyway, moving on with steak, actually, out of the 4 major points that I pulled out of that little opinion piece, the other was, why are we throwing 30, he said 32 ingredients into fake meat when we could just have one, which is beef. I actually shared this on Facebook yesterday, I think it was, but it goes back to what I've said multiple times. Like we as a society over the past probably 5 years have really buckled down on healthy living and eating and diet.
Yeah, I think that's true.
And a lot of that comes with, well, you don't do processed foods, right? Because processed foods is not good for your body. They found that out over time. It might taste good, but it's just not good for you. And then they turn around and whoever's creating fake meat is pushing it. And I'm like, these are the very many times the very same people who've been talking about healthy living and everything, and they're trying to even sell it as that. They're like, this is healthier than beef, but you're throwing, like, I get it. There's stuff in there, like there's vegetables and whatnot, and I can see where the argument can kind of be made. But I've also said this before too, where there was a discussion about what does fake meat protein based is how they say it, protein based fake meat versus actual meat, what's the difference? Well, it's this. um Real meat that you get directly from the animal has certain vitamins and supplements that you will never be able to obtain through vegetables. And that's the same with vegetables as well. Don't get me wrong. So the important part is, instead of processing foods and trying to sell it as healthy, when in fact the last 5 to 10 years we've been saying you can't have processed foods, like it's bad for your body, it's hard on it, it's not good for it. It actually, in fact, it's shown at times, if I remember correctly, that it inhibits and promotes cancerous cells, um, which is probably why we have such a horrible issue with cancer in our society. But the fact that we've been explaining this in one way, and then we completely do a 180 in the course of 24 months trying to sell fake meat. And again, it comes back to, why are you doing this? Because one, processed foods are not good for your body, and two, you can get all the supplements and nutrients and vitamins that you need by eating a balanced diet of veggies and meat.
Absolutely right. No argument there. I mean, what's one of the number one um, health issues that we have as a society in the U.S.?
It's obesity.
Obesity.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is taken right into a direct line to our processed foods, high sugar foods, which, just a junk food is all
But
processed.
it's also like
And
heart issues and stuff, which comes
yes,
from
same thing.
cholesterol, which, how do you get the
Yes.
cholesterol? Processed foods.
Well, and the protein based language,
Yeah.
protein based. They want to say, well, meat's just protein, so this is protein. No, it's not. So again, they're using language much like climate change to, here's your protein based burger. Wait a minute, is it really a burger, or is it protein based chemicals? And
Yeah.
so they try to use the same language in
The other
order
thing,
to
the,
align it with.
the other thing too that I was thinking of, because I have, over the last couple of years, I've been if people don't know me like personally, you would know that um I have been very much into reducing my weight because I got a little heavy, and I do that through the tracking of macronutrients. Macronutrients is the three big nutrients of, protein, fat, and carbohydrates. And as long as you maintain a number or less than that, and you continue working out and staying healthy, you can reduce weight or maintain weight, or actually even gain weight in terms of muscle mass by utilizing your foods. Because when you go to take care of your body, 70% of it is in the kitchen. It's not in the gym. That's been shown on many studies. Uh, Diet is a huge thing. And so when when you look at a protein based meat, like what you're talking about, looking at from that perspective of macronutrients, I'm very interested to see what the protein would be. Is it half the amount of protein, the same, so same weight, everything? Let's look at, two assumed patties. They're the exact same size, and I don't know anything about protein based meat. That's why this is actually a legit question. I would be curious to see the exact same size, exact same weight, exact same look, put them side by side. Is it the exact same protein amount, carbohydrate amount, fat amount between the two? I would guess the protein based is probably it's probably less in fat, I would guess. But I would also assume that it's going to be significantly reduced in protein as well, which I would love to see what that is. However, because it's probably based off of plants and stuff and soy and whatnot, I bet your carbohydrates skyrocket. So
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that as well. And you know what? If it tastes good and you want it, go ahead. But don't tell me I can't raise beef for other people who want beef.
mm-hmm.
and call it protein and play that messaging game. One of the other things you may come across with that is their argument may be, well, we've got a variety of proteins. We're using, soy. We're using a concoction that we have in a lab that's specially, concocted to meet these requirements. Plus, we have lentils, and we have 3 or 4 different protein-based food supplements in this, which is like, I don't care, doesn't matter. You can even mix a little beef in there if you want. I don't care, but I'm not going to eat that. This is what I want, and I think most people want what they want, and if it tastes good, if you're a guy that wants to eat nothing but potato chips and live off of that, fine. I mean, I used to work with a guy. We'd go in the backcountry for a couple days, 3-4 days, and that guy he would bring literally bags of chips and pop. That's what he ate. I'm like, dude, there's no, I don't know. No, there's no way. I'd have been hangry about the first 8 hours after not having some meat, And so but that's just the way he did. If you want to do that, hey, that's okay. It's your body. You're free to do whatever. So one of the other things that along that line is, I think he mentioned that, when you flip on a thermostat, increase it in the wintertime for furnace, or you turn it down for air conditioning, and all of a sudden you have a brownout. Guess who gets enraged? I mean, they get mad that power's not there. And the next thing you know, they're picking up a telephone. If you've ever talked to somebody or reported, and you know what, you got to report it. That's fine. Hey, we've lost power here, and maybe in our country, it's usually not for a brownout. It's usually weather related, or somebody's hitting a power pole or something like that, and they got to go searching for it, or a substation has blown some kind of a transformer or something. I mean, that happens. And if you lose power, okay. I usually give it an hour.
Yeah.
And because you know what? 5,000 other people are calling reporting this outage because I got no heat or I got no cooling. Do you know how hot it is out there? Yeah, those linemen are out there.
Yeah.
In the cold or in the heat trying to solve your problem. And they just get, and if you ever talked, I started to say, if you've ever talked to somebody who's answered that phone, they're like, yeah, we've reported it or heard the report. We got people on it. We don't know where it's at yet, but we're headed. Or then pretty soon, people then get out on their face tube or whatever it is they're on, and say, okay, here's where the power outage is. Pretty soon, everybody's got that, out. It's a such and such over here. No, it's not. It's over here. I mean, so you have all of those issues to deal with. But the bottom line is, you flip the switch and it's not there. People get mad.
Oh yeah.
And the first thing they do is they call a power company. It's not really to report that there's a power outage. The power's out. We need heat. If the power's out.
Complaint.
A complaint. It's a complaint line, and somebody who's answered that phone they're just like jerks. I mean, it's their fault personally when they do pick that phone up that your power is out. So, yeah, there's a huge hypocrisy there, an enormous hypocrisy. And the other part of that is we are about service anymore. We are not a production. We are about service.
Right.
And when you do that, when you flip that switch to no longer producing things and only servicing things, you lose track. And I've said this before, people's understanding of where their food comes from is only one generation away from where they were producing it.
Right.
So,
well, I think that was a big part of his argument that it wasn't explicitly stated, but he definitely made the point.
He implied it, and I picked that up and went, yeah, I've been saying that for years.
Yeah. The last point he had in there too was it kind of goes back to the 3% telling the 97% what's going on, but how to humanely euthanize animals, but then they're okay with having wolves, coyotes, mountain lions just eat the back end of a cow while it's calving. Like that, it's a very graphic depiction, but it's also accurate because
it's accurate.
Don't hurt the animals. What about the animal getting killed?
Well, but then their argument is usually, but they only kill the sick and the weak ones. No, they don't. They're opportunists. True. They kill whatever they can. Yeah. And a calf that's being born, and they're taking it right out as it's coming out and trying to kill that cow and eat the cow hind end at the same time. There is nothing sick and weak about that. If that cow was sick and weak, she may be weak, but she certainly isn't sick if she's delivering a healthy calf, unless it's a late term issue. And that calf certainly most of the time is not weak, and they don't have this innate knowledge that they only do that. That's a fallacy, absolute fallacy. And
Yeah,
it's done to support, hey, this is why we can put wolves back in Yellowstone Park. They're a cage cleaner. No, they're not. They're an opportunist.
it's very frustrating. Next one. All right, that article is done. Now we can go into the other one which I had, and we've got plenty of time to go over this. I was watching one of Dad's favorite shows on MSNBC called Morning Joe, and that was, I think, Thursday or Wednesday, and they were focused on how big ag is only impacting farmers and ranchers, and I completely disagree. Right. I shared my thoughts both on Twitter and Facebook, but I'll quote quick my Facebook feed because I think I made the argument a little more eloquently on that than I did Twitter, because you only have a certain amount of characters in Twitter. But here's what I said. I'm watching MSNBC's Morning Joe before heading to work. They are analyzing corporate consolidation of big tech and big ag. Big ag, honestly, was more of an echo rather than anything. They're focused on big tech. What they're saying is mostly accurate. However, those on Morning Joe claim that less people are impacted by big ag. Not true. If you go to any chain grocery stores, you are directly impacted by big ag. They set prices at the production levels and the consumer levels. If you rely on non-locally produced food to survive, you definitely rely on big ag. The United States relies on big ag just as much as big tech. And that was my argument right there. But
but if you're also a consumer at a small mom and pop butcher shop in a local neighborhood, they're still impacted by that because they have to acquire that beef or pork or chicken somewhere
at the market price.
At the market price, and big ag is still controlling that. Interesting. I was gonna call you or text you or something about that very same thing. Was this last week, Cargill purchased the 4th largest chicken producer. Yeah, so they've acquired them. They also acquired the 7th largest, which was the highest or the largest vertical operation, which means just multi-storied, as I understand it. Chicken producer. So there you go. You're consolidating, and you're getting that large corporate control over the chicken industry again, and that's a bad thing, because what are one of the 4 packers? Cargill.
Yeah.
Thing. And they control price.
It's frustrating because well, 2 parts. I'll try and stay away from the first one as much as possible because we've already hit this dead horse a million times, and I guarantee we'll hit it more. But the Packers doing what they do to get the prices both at their level and then at the consumer level, it's very frustrating, and I hope that they fix it. They being lawmakers. The argument in Morning Joe was that I think it was the purchase of those 2 operations that you're discussing that kind of stemmed with the ag part, because they're talking about, corporate consolidation. Here's the issue, and here's why lawmakers are looking to go back to the laws that were created a century ago with antitrust and trust busting and stuff like that, because that's what's happening is they're slowly morphing into 4 big conglomerates because they continue to pull the smaller guy to them. And it's that game where you start off as a blob and you get a smaller blob, so you get a little bit bigger, and then you get the next smaller blob and you get even bigger, and you just work your way up until you're the biggest blob and you win. But the other issue primarily that I have, and this is where the frustration came out, and that's why I think I put it on Facebook and Twitter, was that everybody sees big tech because they always have a phone in their hand. It's very clear. A phone, a computer, something. The problem is, and it goes back actually to the article that we just got done kind of discussing, is much like flipping the switch, they just assume it'll be there. Is they go to the grocery store and they just assume it's going to be there. They don't know where the food comes from or anything like that, or how the system works. And that's what frustrates me, because while everybody can physically see big tech in their life, even though they do physically see and they physically taste and they physically feel big ag in their life, they don't make that same connection because it's just not the same. And that's what's the frustrating part, because many, especially in, I would argue, urban areas, they just don't understand. And so they haven't made that connection yet. And that's where they come back to, oh yeah, it's mostly big tech, but the big ag's kind of there too, but it's mostly just the farmers and ranchers that it's impacting. I'm like, no, it's not, man. I need you to open your eyes. I'm trying to help you. Like, this is why we do things like this channel, that, you know, like, please look around you. We are trying to make this easy for you to understand. But I'll be honest, when I was trying to do some research and start this channel, I was looking for other resources to kind of mimic and see how they do things successfully. It's hard to find ag stuff anywhere. And I don't
Nobody
know.
cares about it.
I think it's that. And I think ag people suck at trying to get their message out.
I was gonna say, and there's the problem right there. That is a testament to the reliability of your food supply, starting at the grassroots, the ground. That is a testament to your reliability. We produce more food than anywhere in the world
For now.
It's
going to change very rapidly in the next decade.
Yes, absolutely. Less than a decade. I think you're going to see some things changing in the next, within 3 to 5 years. And it's not going to be pretty. And part of that is it's a domino effect. It's a web. It's not a linear relationship. What is one of the largest things that's causing us angst right now is fuel prices. And I mean, not just ag, everybody. If you have fuel prices, and if you are wondering why some of your things are going up in the grocery store, if you have it, a truck brought it. Trucks don't run on fresh air. It takes some fresh air along with that fire in those cylinders produced by fossil fuel. And when you do what you've done in the last 6 months, 7 months with our fuel supply, you know, it's nuts. I'm paying almost $4 a gallon for fuel. They're at that little place next to the ranch in town. And I want to support those people because I don't want that store to go away.
Right.
But man, when I'm spending $75 to put diesel in a pickup to pull some cows to town to send them to sale because we can't afford to feed them, is there a problem there? You know, I mean,
it's kind of like
not the $75 was each fill up, not a one time during the day.
Well, and I think it goes down my personal understanding and belief in somebody, you know, there's the theory of the butterfly effect. I think the butterfly effect is very real. And in this sense, it's also, it's coincided with the domino, you know, effect. You know, one thing just, it cascades down the road. But what happened, you know, what happened because we made that one decision? Well, that one decision changed everything around it, you know, or that one action. That's the butterfly. And then the domino is, you know, the secondary, tertiary, and contingent, you know, all those extra things that happen down the line because of it. But yeah, I think there's two things. We, as an ag community, as a whole, need to stop talking to each other and at each other, and need to start trying to microphone our message out. You get a megaphone or something and start sharing with the world. The other is, and I think people like Suzanne Miller are doing a really good job with that, because they're finding ways to use the digital techniques to reach people. But then the other thing is just to, like, somehow we got to get on shows like Morning Joe of all places, because I disagree with 99.9% of the things that they spew off of that channel. However, it's important to have a seat at tables like that, because that's how you're able to stop mismessaging like that. Where, again, I'm actually not going to say that it's their fault. I'm going to say it's the fact that they just don't know better. And that's where it goes back to, again, the 3% versus the 97%. And honestly, it's the switch on this one, 3% of the producers trying to tell the other 97% of the population, hey, this is what we do. This is how we impact you every
Right.
day. Yeah.
You're right. The problem with that is there's a couple problems I see. One of them is if they were a decent journalist, they wouldn't just get on a computer and tippity tap tap trying to find something. Real journalists go out and they talk to the source. There is no such thing as that anymore.
Yeah.
So they
Everybody's
could
got to
find
come to the
that.
journalist to get their story.
Right. But but journalists tend to want to just write a story from their air-conditioned office desk instead of get out. If they are a TV personality like that, I get it that you've got other things and you got a lot of stuff to do and you've got subordinates to go out, but those subordinates aren't out there that often. Then the other problem is we all have our own agenda. There is no way you and I are going to support wholeheartedly big ag. We're not going to do that. So we're going to say our side of the story that we really want out there, and that's what affects us the most. And so we are also going to be biased to a point in what we do, but we need to be honest, and that's where I think we're lacking in that is one, we don't tend to be proactive about it because we're so damn busy trying to produce food. Number two, you can't get any two farmers or ranchers to agree on anything because we are independent about this is the way we do it, because you have to be independent in order to make it in the business of what you are. So there are different issues to that.
Well, there's also, I think that independence also comes from the way you operate cows is both personality based. Everybody's gonna have their own personality, their own way of doing things. Like we prefer horses, others prefer ATVs. Got it. Those simple things like that. There's also though, and I think we've had this conversation on like in the shoot, the difference between farming and ranching in South Central Montana and farming and ranching in North Central Montana or Northwest Montana. And then you're talking just Montana. Now, okay, there's a difference between doing Montana and Wyoming. There's a difference between Wyoming and the Dakotas. There's a difference between that region and the Southeast, Alabama, Mississippi. There's that independence also is due to the background or the area in which the producers at too.
Yeah, well, like I've said, assets. What are your assets? What is your ground like? What is your grasses like? What is your rainfall? All of those things are dependent on how you run your operations sustainably. So you're absolutely right. They're all run differently, and we all do things slightly differently. Even in a region like where we're at in South Central Montana, there's a lot of people that are doing the same thing we are, except that they're doing it a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do isn't necessarily going to work for them. So that's where that independent and you know what is that independence that comes up with innovation, because you're like, okay, I need to do this for me, and you innovate, and you, instead of depending on somebody to come and tell you what to do and how to do it, you're doing it for yourself. And that is part of our independent spirit of a country, used to be, because we produced things instead of service things. And there's still some of the innovation that takes place in service. Example of that is UPS, FedEx. That was an innovation, and it's still a service. They're not producing a damn thing, it's service. But look how instant, because of what they did, how instant people want things. Telephones, delivery service of goods and services, which is a service. That is like, if you can't get that tomorrow, I can't wait 3 days for this. Holy crap, we used to wait 2 weeks for a delivery on something when I was a kid, and it was through the mail. I mean, you get a slip in the mailbox. If it was too big to fit in your mailbox, which is, our mailboxes are substantial, you'd have to then drive into town and get that thing at the local post office, and it'd have a big old box back there for you if it was something like that you couldn't get locally. That's how you did it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I think to kind of finish the conversation, the other thing too is you said we have to come to the table and be honest. I think that's a big thing is the integrity. And people have to come forward and there needs to be a discussion both at the legislative and, as much as I hate it, the media, to come forward with integrity and say, okay, here's the thing. We as small cattle producers, this is how we see it. However, we also understand there does need to be a larger infrastructure and there needs to be a greater support system through some of these big four. However, at the same time, there needs to be an understanding and an agreement in which there is a limit where they can no longer continue to get bigger. Now, this is where the legality and the your personal values and stuff come in. Like, at what point do we stay? This is the limit because there's a slippery slope there, and
right.
determining how big people can get. But I think it's still a conversation that people you need to incorporate integrity and have a legitimate discussion and say, okay, where do we start? And that's the big thing.
Well, and I think that unfortunately, whenever you're put on a show in the media, and all of these shows are the same. I think these uh and I occasionally watch this Morning Joe, just because the absurdity is kind of funny in a way, but it's not funny. But so many times, and I don't care which network it is that you're watching, whether it's the one that supposedly is conservative to the most liberal, they are all of them pushing an agenda that
Mhm.
their administrations or their producers want you to push. So whichever side you're on of that, when you come on, by definition that you're there, you are an antagonist or the hostile side of their argument, and they're trying to use that, which is not honest, and that's not what should be done. The problem is that's how they operate now, and for them to make their argument, not to find out what the argument even is or a
Right.
solution to it. It's they are using both sides or whatever it is to bolster what they, again, you're right, the 97% that's on that concrete, to make the 3% of us that are not, um, as a tool for their agenda, their means, whatever, and they're not asking real honest questions. So I don't know until that is exposed, and most people don't care. Most people don't know enough, and not that they're dumb. I'm not saying that at all. They don't know enough about the subject that they use them as their resource and
Right.
as their source material. And until that happens and they're exposed for that as a corporate, um, for whatever means that they're trying to do, that's not going to change. It's not, and it's an uphill battle. But yeah, um, we've always said that agriculture should use a term called parity. I think we've mentioned this before, maybe in another episode early on, which means you have a bushel of wheat, it's worth so much for this in trade, or this is what the value of it is, and it should never go down or fluctuate based on that product in and of itself. Maybe the supply and demand, yes, but you should have an equality of what that value is. And the same thing with meats. That was something that was started in the 70s, and it's always been said, oh, yeah, well, go ahead, just don't this year, just don't have farmers and ranchers produce anything, and we'll see how fast people come around. Yeah, that is in theory a good idea, and you can get people's attention, but when you don't have that ability because you're trying to survive on what you do,
Right.
it's going to go flat. It's not going to happen. So if you then switch that to, you know what, when big ag gets enough, and they're that big blob that you talked about that's getting bigger and bigger, and they consume everybody else, and now you think food's expensive,
Right.
now they control all of it, or the biggest share, in which is happening already, and people just don't realize it. They control the markets. They control our markets. So you are at their mercy, and you are paying these high prices partially because their market control and their size and what they're wanting to do, which is make their investors happy. It is not about production for food for people. And plant-based meat, I think, is an alternative to that.
Right.
Although it's in the same size, it's just saying, oh, hey, we got this. You can't afford beef? We got this for you over here.
Well, there was an executive from I think it was JBS. I think it was JBS. He explicitly got caught saying, my goal is that by 2050, kids will say, what is beef? I want there to be, only plant-based stuff. And they don't even know what beef actually was. Like, where did that come from? Like, what's that term? Like, that's what he wants to be at eventually. But no, I absolutely agree that it's a thing that just needs to be addressed. There needs to be a way of going about it, but it's hard.
Well, and the one thing for me, to kind of put the stop point to this for myself, is you're talking about congressional hearings. Didn't we just have some of those?
Yeah.
Wasn't the one or some representatives from JBS and Cargill in there?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Yeah, look how fast and how efficiently that went away.
Yeah. Well, I think with that, we will wrap it up. We've beat this dead horse enough. The biggest thing is, I thought the article was interesting. It had an interesting take on how there's no longer an understanding of what producers do anymore.
Right.
And then it led into what I caught this week of people not realizing that big ag really is in every meal of your life. If you are putting food in your mouth, you are dealing with big ag. You just don't realize it. And it's frustrating, again, because we see big tech in our hands all day long in front of our faces with the screens, and we can equate it to that. But when we see food, we don't equate it. But that is what it is. So
yeah, well, and it's part of that is a strategy of it's us against them, and it doesn't matter what it is. We're torn in this country right now with racial strife, which black versus white. And I think you talk to most people and they don't care. They just want to be around good people. It's the haves, the have-nots. It's the you name it. It's big ag, small producers. It's red versus blue. Everything is about two sides of it, and not about coming together, but pointing out the differences so that you can continue that to have the us versus them. And I think it's a lot of theater there. So anyway, with that, we appreciate you watching, and we thank you till you're better paid.